The camera flashes exploded like gunfire outside the glass tower on Madison Avenue. Marcus Holloway, 52 years old, CEO of Holloway Enterprises, stepped through the revolving door into a wall of screaming journalists. Microphones jabbed toward his face like weapons. Questions came in waves, overlapping, drowning each other out. Holloway, is it true you embezzled $40 million? Did you know about the offshore accounts? Were you working with the Cayman Island shell companies? His face remained stone. No expression, no comment. Security guards formed a human shield around him, pushing through the crowd toward the black SUV waiting at the curb. But Marcus saw something the cameras didn't catch. Across the street, beneath the scaffolding of the construction site, a man sat on a flattened cardboard box. Gray beard, weathered face, layers of warm clothing despite the summer heat. The homeless man wasn't shouting, wasn't holding a phone to record the spectacle. He just watched. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Then Marcus was shoved into the SUV, and the door slammed shut. The vehicle pulled away, leaving the circus behind. But that single moment of eye contact lingered in Marcus's mind like an afterimage. That man had been there for years, always in the same spot. Marcus had walked past him thousands of times without a single glance. And now, in the worst moment of his life, that nameless stranger was the only person who looked at him without hatred or hunger in his eyes. The scandal had broken 3 days earlier. A whistleblower inside Holloway Enterprises leaked documents to the press, claiming Marcus had siphoned millions into secret accounts, manipulated stock prices, and defrauded investors. The Securities and Exchange Commission froze his assets within hours. His legal team assured him it was all a misunderstanding, a setup, but the damage was already done. Public opinion had already convicted him. A board of directors held an emergency meeting that same afternoon. Marcus wasn't invited. His own company. The empire he'd built from nothing over 30 years. And they locked him out of the conference room. He stood in the hallway, listening through the door as his so-called partners discussed his removal. "We need to distance ourselves immediately," said Richard Chun, his CFO and closest business ally for 20 years. "If we don't act now, we all go down with him." Sarah Winters, the VP of Operations who Marcus had personally mentored and promoted 3 times, spoke next. "I agree. We have to think about the shareholders, about our families. This isn't personal. It's survival." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, not his heart, something deeper. The last piece of trust he'd been holding on to. When the meeting ended, they filed out past him without making eye contact. Richard paused, opened his mouth as if to say something, then simply shook his head and walked away. Sarah didn't even pause. That evening, Marcus sat alone in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. His phone buzzed incessantly on the marble counter. He'd stopped answering hours ago. 37 missed calls. 62 unread messages. Most were from reporters. A few were from former friends, asking questions disguised as concern. Hey, Marcus, just checking in, dot, dot, dot. Is any of this true? Translation: should I be worried about my own reputation? He poured himself a glass of scotch. 50-year-old single malt. $2,000 a bottle. It tasted like ash. The TV on the wall played coverage of his downfall on mute. His face on every channel. Disgraced CEO. Corporate fraud. Billionaire scandal. They'd already decided his guilt. Already written his ending. His phone rang again. This time it was his brother, David. Marcus hesitated, then answered. David, Jesus Christ, Marcus. What the hell did you do? Not, are you okay? Not, do you need help? Just accusation. I didn't do anything, Marcus said quietly. The documents are fabricated. Someone set me up. That's what they all say? David's voice was cold, distant. Look, I'm calling because Mom is upset. The press is showing up at her house. You need to fix this. Stay away from the family until it blows over. Stay away from. Marcus couldn't finish the sentence. I'm your brother, and I have kids, Marcus, a wife, a business of my own. I can't be associated with this. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone in his hand for a long moment. Then he hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, pieces scattering across the hardwood floor. He stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. Everyone was gone. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus watched his life disintegrate in real time. His fiancée, Vanessa, a socialite he'd been with for 3 years, released a statement through her publicist. I am shocked and heartbroken by these revelations. I had no knowledge of Marcus's activities and am ending our relationship effective immediately. She'd moved out of the penthouse while he was meeting with lawyers. Took her clothes, her jewelry, and the Monet he'd bought her for her birthday. Didn't even leave a note. His so-called friends, the people he'd vacationed with in the Maldives, played golf with at exclusive clubs, attended charity galas with, all vanished like smoke. Group chats went silent. Invitations were rescinded. Phone numbers were blocked. It was as if he'd never existed in their world. The media circus intensified. Paparazzi camped outside his building. Drones flew past his windows. A tabloid published photos of him leaving his therapist's office with the headline, Guilty Conscience? His legal team delivered more bad news daily. Criminal charges were being considered. Civil suits were piling up. Even if he was eventually exonerated, the legal fees alone would bankrupt him. Everything he'd built, everything he'd worked for, was being stripped away piece by piece. And the worst part? He was starting to wonder if he deserved it. Not for the crimes he didn't commit, but for the person he'd become along the way. Cold, calculating, ruthless in business. He'd stepped on people climbing to the top, destroyed competitors without mercy, prioritized profit over everything else. Maybe this was karma. Maybe the universe was balancing the scales. One night, unable to sleep, Marcus left the penthouse at 2 a.m. He told his security detail to stay behind. He needed to be alone, really alone. He walked the empty streets of Manhattan in a baseball cap and sunglasses, hands shoved in the pockets of an old jacket he hadn't worn in years. No destination in mind, just walking, trying to outpace the thoughts circling in his head like vultures. He found himself standing outside his office building, the Holloway Tower, 60 stories of steel and glass, his name carved into the granite above the entrance. He'd stood on this spot 28 years ago, when it was just a hole in the ground, promising himself he'd build something that would last forever. Now it felt like a tombstone. Movement in his peripheral vision made him turn. The homeless man. Still there. Still in the same spot beneath the scaffolding. He had a small camping stove going, heating something in a dented pot. The smell of instant noodles drifted across the street. Their eyes met again. This time, Marcus didn't look away. The man didn't either. For a long moment, they just stood there, two strangers in the dark, connected by nothing except the space between them. Then, Marcus felt something strange, a tightness in his chest, a burning behind his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cried. Childhood, maybe. Before he learned that emotions were weakness, that vulnerability was dangerous. But standing there, looking at this man who had nothing, absolutely nothing, while Marcus had lost everything he'd spent his life accumulating, something broke. His knees buckled. He grabbed a lamppost to steady himself, but it wasn't enough. He sank down onto the sidewalk, back against the cold metal, head in his hands. He didn't hear the footsteps approaching, didn't realize anyone was near until a paper cup appeared in his line of vision, steam rising from the top. The homeless man stood there, holding out the cup. "It's just hot water and bouillon," the man said. His voice was rough, like gravel, but not unkind. "But it helps on cold nights." Marcus looked up at him, at the lines on his face, the dirt under his fingernails, the kindness in his eyes. This stranger was offering him the only thing he had, and asking for nothing in return. Marcus's hand trembled as he took the cup. "Thank you," he whispered. The man nodded and returned to his spot. Didn't make a big deal of it. Didn't wait for praise or recognition. Just went back to his small stove and his small corner of the world. Marcus sat there on the sidewalk for 2 hours, sipping the warm broth, watching the city breathe. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel completely alone. The man's name was Thomas. Marcus learned this 3 nights later when he returned to the same spot. He couldn't explain why he kept going back. His lawyers told him to stay inside, to avoid any public appearances that might be photographed and misconstrued. But something pulled him to that corner, to that presence that demanded nothing from him. Thomas was reading when Marcus approached. An old paperback, pages yellowed and spine broken. He looked up, nodded in recognition, and went back to his book. No questions, no judgment, just acknowledgement. "What are you reading?" Marcus asked, hovering awkwardly a few feet away. Thomas held up the cover. "East of Eden. Steinbeck. You read it? Long time ago. College, maybe." Marcus shifted his weight. He felt ridiculous standing there in his $1,000 shoes, trying to make small talk with a homeless man. But he didn't leave. "It's about brothers," Thomas said, closing the book but keeping his finger between the pages as a marker. "About jealousy and betrayal and trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Heavy stuff." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Sounds about right. Single quotes." Thomas studied him for a moment. "You want to sit?" Marcus hesitated. The sidewalk was dirty. There were stains he didn't want to identify. But Thomas had already shifted over, making room on his cardboard. Marcus sat. They didn't talk right away. Just sat there together, watching the occasional taxi pass by. A silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was actually the first peaceful moment Marcus had experienced in weeks. "Everyone thinks I'm guilty," Marcus finally said. He didn't know why he was confiding in this stranger. Maybe because Thomas was the only person who didn't seem to have an opinion. "Are you?" Thomas asked simply. "No." The word came out harder than intended. "I built that company from nothing. Everything I have, I earned. I didn't steal. I didn't cheat. Someone inside my own organization set me up, and I don't even know who or why." Thomas nodded slowly. "Doesn't matter what I think, or what anyone thinks. Only matters what's true. Truth doesn't seem to matter much anymore," Marcus said. "Not when everyone's already decided." "People are scared," Thomas said. "When someone powerful falls, it makes them feel better about their own lives. Safer, somehow. Like the universe has rules, and even the mighty have to follow them. They need you to be guilty. Otherwise, they have to face the fact that bad things happen to anyone for no reason at all." "That's scarier." Marcus looked at him sharply. "You sound like you've thought about this a lot." "I've had time to think." Thomas's voice carried something heavy. "Something old. Not much else to do out here. How long have you been ... Single quotes Marcus trailed off, not sure how to phrase it without sounding condescending. "Homeless?" Thomas finished for him. 4 years. Give or take. I was in the spot across the street for 2 years before that, before they renovated that building and chased me off." "What happened?" "If you don't mind me asking." Thomas was quiet for so long that Marcus thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke. "I had a company once. Not as big as yours, but successful. Commercial real estate. Had a partner. Guy I'd known since high school. Trusted him completely. One day, I found out he'd been cooking the books for 3 years. Stealing from clients, from investors, from me. When it came out, he blamed everything on me. Had documents with my forged signature. Emails from a fake account. He was smarter than I gave him credit for." Marcus felt his stomach turn. "What happened?" "I lost everything. House, savings. Wife left and took the kids. I couldn't even get a job as a janitor because my name was poison. Spent a year fighting it in court until I ran out of money for lawyers. The case just died. He got away with it. Last I heard, he's living in Florida with a boat and a new family." The casual way Thomas said it made it somehow worse. like he'd accepted it as an unchangeable fact of his existence. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly. "That's single quotes life," Thomas finished. "It's just life. I was angry for a long time. Angry at him, at the system, at God, at everyone. Then I was drunk for a while. Then I was just tired. Now I'm here, and honestly, I sleep better than I did in my king-size bed." Marcus looked at him skeptically. "You really mean that?" Thomas shrugged. "Out here, nobody expects anything from me. Nobody wants something. Nobody's trying to use me or manipulate me or get close to me for the wrong reasons. I'm invisible. And there's a freedom in that you can't understand until you've been where I've been, where you are now. This isn't freedom," Marcus said. "This is hell." "No," Thomas corrected gently. "Hell is being surrounded by people and realizing they're all strangers. Hell is success that costs you everything real. Hell is looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person staring back. You think you've lost everything? You haven't. You've just lost the illusion." Marcus wanted to argue, to defend his life, his choices, his success. But the words died in his throat, because somewhere deep down, he knew Thomas was right. The next morning, Marcus received the call he'd been dreading. His mother had passed away. Heart attack. The funeral would be in 3 days. He sat in his penthouse, holding the phone long after his brother hung up. His mother had been 81, vibrant, healthy. But the stress of the scandal, the reporters at her door, the shame of having her son's name dragged through the mud, it had been too much. She died alone in her house. The housekeeper found her in her chair, the TV still on, playing news coverage of her son's downfall. Marcus hadn't been allowed to see her. David had made that clear. Stay away until this blows over. Now she was gone, and those would be the last words his brother said to him on her behalf. The funeral was exactly as terrible as he'd imagined. He arrived early, hoping to avoid a scene. But his sister Rebecca was already there, along with David and their families. When Marcus walked in, Rebecca's face hardened. "You shouldn't be here," she said coldly. "She was my mother," Marcus replied. "And you killed her." The words landed like a punch. Marcus physically recoiled. "Rebecca, you couldn't just be successful. You had to be greedy. You had to cross lines. And now she's dead because she couldn't handle the shame of what you did." Marcus opened his mouth to defend himself, but David stepped forward, placing a hand on Rebecca's shoulder. "Let's not do this here," David said, not defending Marcus, just trying to avoid a scene. The service was brief, impersonal. The pastor who'd never met their mother read from prepared notes. Family and friends sat in clusters, whispering. Marcus sat alone in the back row. No one approached him. No one acknowledged him. He might as well have been invisible. After the burial, there was a reception at David's house. Marcus wasn't invited, but he went anyway. He needed to be around family, even if they hated him, even if they blamed him for everything. He stood in the corner of the living room, holding a paper plate with food he couldn't eat, watching his nieces and nephews play. They'd been told to stay away from Uncle Marcus. He could see it in how they glanced at him nervously, then quickly looked away. Rebecca approached him, her husband hovering protectively behind her. "You need to leave," she said quietly. "I just want to. I don't care what you want. You've taken enough from this family. Mom's gone because of you. Don't make this worse by being here." "I didn't do what they're saying," Marcus said, hearing the desperation in his own voice. "I'm your brother." "Don't you know me?" "I thought I did," Rebecca said. "But the brother I knew would never have put Mom through this. The brother I knew had integrity. I don't know who you are anymore." She walked away. David didn't even bother with words. He just pointed to the door. Marcus left. He drove aimlessly for hours, eventually finding himself back in Manhattan, back on that corner. It was raining. Thomas had rigged a tarp between the scaffolding and a shopping cart, creating a small shelter. He was sitting underneath it, staying dry, reading his book by the light of a battery-powered lantern. Marcus got out of his car and walked through the rain. He didn't care that his suit was getting soaked, didn't care about anything anymore. Thomas looked up as Marcus approached, took in the funeral suit, the haunted eyes, the way Marcus's hands were shaking. He didn't ask questions, just shifted over and lifted the edge of the tarp. "Come on," Thomas said. "Get out of the rain." Marcus crawled under the tarp and collapsed against the brick wall. And then, for the first time since he was a child, Marcus Holloway cried. Great, heaving sobs that shook his whole body. Thomas didn't tell him to stop, didn't tell him everything would be okay. He just sat there, a quiet presence in the storm, letting Marcus break apart without judgment. When the tears finally stopped, Marcus found his voice. "My mother died. The stress of all this, it killed her, and my family blames me. They told me to leave her funeral, my own mother's funeral." Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I didn't get to go to my father's funeral. My ex-wife had a restraining order. Said I was dangerous, unstable, all lies, but it didn't matter." I stood across the street from the cemetery and watched from behind a tree. That was the last time I saw any of my family. That was 9 years ago. Marcus looked at him. Really looked at him. This man had lost everything too. Had been betrayed, abandoned, destroyed. But somehow he'd survived. Somehow he'd found a way to keep going. "How do you do it?" Marcus asked. "How do you wake up every day knowing everything was taken from you?" Thomas considered the question seriously. "At first, I didn't. At first, I wanted to die. Tried a few times, actually. But I was even bad at that." He gave a small, sad smile. "Then one day, I realized something. The people who betrayed me, who lied about me, who destroyed my life, they wanted me to disappear, to stop existing, to give up, and I decided I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I'd survive, not to prove anything to them, just to prove to myself that I could, that I was stronger than what they did to me, ... Marcus felt something shift inside him. A small spark. Not hope, exactly, but something close to it. Defiance, maybe. The will to keep breathing out of pure stubbornness. I don't know how to do this, Marcus admitted. How to be nothing. I've always been something. Someone, the CEO, the success story, the man who built an empire. Without that, who am I? You're Marcus, Thomas said simply. That's who you've always been. The rest was just costumes and titles. Doesn't matter if you're in a boardroom or under a tarp. You're still you. I don't even know who that is anymore. Then maybe it's time to find out. They sat in silence after that, listening to the rain drum against the tarp. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The city never slept, never stopped moving. But under that makeshift shelter, time seemed to pause. Marcus found himself talking. Really talking, in a way he hadn't in years. Maybe ever. He told Thomas about his childhood, growing up poor in Detroit, watching his father work 3 jobs and still barely make rent, the hunger that made his stomach ache at night, the shame of wearing the same clothes to school every day, the vow he'd made to himself at 12 years old that he'd never be poor again, that he'd claw his way to the top no matter what it took. He talked about his first business, a small tech startup in his garage, the sleepless nights, the maxed out credit cards. The moment his first product sold and he realized it was actually going to work, the rush of that first success, the addiction to it. He talked about building Holloway Enterprises, the deals he'd made, the competitors he'd crushed, the people he'd fired without a second thought, the relationships he'd sacrificed, the birthdays and anniversaries and moments he'd missed, because work always came first. I thought I was building something that mattered, Marcus said, something that would last. A legacy. But what's the point of a legacy if there's no one left to remember you? If everyone who knew you is glad you're gone? Thomas poked at a small fire he'd started in a metal can, watching the flames dance. You know what I learned out here? Legacy is bullshit. It's just ego dressed up as ambition. The only thing that matters is how you treat people right now. In this moment, everything else is just story we tell ourselves to feel important. That's easy to say when you have nothing left to lose, Marcus said, not unkindly. That's exactly when it's hardest to say, Thomas countered. When you have nothing, the temptation is to become nothing. To give up on decency and kindness, because what's the point? But that's when those things matter most. Not for other people, for yourself, so you can still recognize yourself in the mirror. Marcus absorbed this. You're a lot smarter than people probably give you credit for. Thomas laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine. I had an MBA from Northwestern, graduated top of my class. Lot of good it did me. Turns out intelligence and wisdom are 2 different things. I had plenty of the first. Took losing everything to start developing the second. Do you ever think about going back? Starting over? Day, Thomas admitted. But I'm 61 years old. No address, no references, no history that isn't a disaster. Who's going to hire me? And even if someone did dot, I don't know if I could survive in that world anymore. Out here, life is simple. Hard, but simple. You worry about food, shelter, safety. That's it. No politics. No backstabbing. No pretending to be someone you're not. You don't miss it? The comfort? The security? I miss my kids, Thomas said quietly. I miss holding my daughter when she was little and she'd fall asleep on my shoulder. I miss teaching my son to throw a baseball. I miss the smell of my wife's perfume. I miss feeling like I belonged somewhere. But the money, the status, the big house and the fancy car? No, I don't miss that at all. Turns out those things don't keep you warm at night. They don't care about you. They're just things. And things can be taken away in a heartbeat. The rain had stopped. The city smelled clean, washed. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Marcus realized he'd been under that tarp all night. He should have been exhausted, but he felt more awake than he had in weeks, more present. I should go, Marcus said, but he didn't move. You can stay, Thomas offered. Not much, but you're welcome to it. No, I mean, I should go handle this. Fight back. I've been hiding, letting them destroy me without even defending myself. But I'm not guilty. And I'm tired of acting like I am. Thomas nodded slowly. Good. But remember something. When you fight back, make sure you're fighting for the right reasons. Not to prove something to people who already made up their minds. Not to get revenge. But because it's the truth, and the truth matters. Even when no one believes it, Marcus stood, his legs stiff from sitting on concrete all night. He looked down at Thomas, this man who'd shown him more genuine kindness than anyone in his so-called inner circle. Why did you help me? Marcus asked. That first night, you didn't know me. You didn't know if I was guilty or innocent. Why did you offer me your food? Thomas smiled. Because you looked like you needed it. That's all. No other reason. Most people wouldn't have done that. Most people aren't sitting where I'm sitting. Out here, you learn pretty quick that we're all one bad day away from losing everything. The executive in the suit and the guy sleeping on cardboard? We're not that different. Just different choices, different luck, different timing. Could be me in that suit tomorrow. Could be you under this tarp. Who knows? So when someone needs help, you help. Because someday you might be the one who needs it. Marcus pulled out his wallet. It still had cash in it. Several $100s. He tried to hand it to Thomas, but Thomas waved it away. Keep it. You might need it more than me soon. Take it. Please. No. Thomas's voice was firm, but not unkind. You don't owe me anything. And I don't want you to feel like you do. What I gave you wasn't a transaction. It was just decency. You can't buy that. You can't repay it. You can only pass it on. Marcus stood there, wallet in hand, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Humility. Real humility. Not the false modesty he'd performed in interviews. but the genuine understanding of how little he actually controlled, how fragile everything he built had been. "Thank you," Marcus said. The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. For what? "For reminding me I'm still human," Thomas nodded. "Come back anytime. The tarp's not going anywhere." Marcus walked back to his car as the city woke up around him. Coffee shops opening, delivery trucks rumbling past, people heading to work, staring at their phones, lost in their own worlds. He got in the car but didn't start it immediately. He just sat there, thinking about everything Thomas had said, about legacy and ego, about things and people, about who he'd been and who he wanted to be. His phone buzzed. Another message from his lawyer. They'd found something, evidence that might prove his innocence. A trail of emails from his CFO, Richard Shun, to an offshore account. Timestamps that showed Richard had been manipulating the documents, building his case, setting Marcus up for months. It wasn't conclusive yet, but it was a start. Marcus called his lawyer back. "Find everything," he said. "I don't care what it costs. I don't care how long it takes. Find everything." He hung up and started the car. As he pulled away from the curb, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Thomas was packing up his tarp, preparing for another day of invisible survival in a city that pretended he didn't exist. But Marcus saw him, and he wouldn't forget. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus became a man possessed. He worked with his legal team around the clock, building his defense. They subpoenaed emails, tracked financial transactions, interviewed employees who'd been too afraid to speak up before. Slowly, painstakingly, the truth began to emerge. Richard Shun had been embezzling from Holloway Enterprises for 5 years. He'd created an elaborate web of shell companies, forged signatures, falsified reports. And when an internal audit got too close to discovering his crimes, he'd pinned everything on Marcus. The evidence was there, hidden, but there. Richard had been careful, but not perfect. He'd made mistakes, left digital footprints, and Marcus's team found them all. The vindication should have felt sweet, but Marcus felt nothing, just a hollow sort of relief. His name would be cleared, eventually. The charges would be dropped. The media would move on to the next scandal. But his mother was still dead. His family still wanted nothing to do with him. His friends had proven they were never really friends at all. And the empire he'd built? It was gutted. The board had voted him out. The company would continue without him. His shares were worth a fraction of what they'd been. He'd gone from billionaire to merely wealthy. It was more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes, but it felt like ashes. Through it all, Marcus kept returning to that corner, to Thomas. Some nights they talked for hours. About philosophy, about life, about the strange paths that led them both to that spot. Other nights they sat in comfortable silence, just existing in each other's presence. Thomas never asked for anything, never treated Marcus differently. Whether Marcus was a disgraced CEO or a vindicated businessman didn't matter. He was just Marcus, a person, an equal. One evening, Marcus brought pizza. 2 large boxes. Thomas raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of pizza. I thought we could share. We're going to eat all this? Might as well try. They sat on the curb, eating pizza straight from the box. It was the best meal Marcus had had in months. Not because of the food, but because of the company. I've been thinking, Marcus said between nights, about what you said, about starting over. Thomas looked at him. Yeah? My name's going to be cleared, probably within the next 2 weeks. The evidence is overwhelming. Richard's already fled the country, which basically proves his guilt. I'll get some money back. Not all of it, but enough. And I've been wondering, what do I do with it? That's up to you. I spent my whole life building something that collapsed the moment people thought I was guilty. Everyone I thought cared about me disappeared, except you. A man who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by being seen with me. You stayed, Thomas shrugged. Wasn't much of a choice. Just seemed like the right thing to do. But that's exactly it, Marcus said, setting down his pizza. You did the right thing without thinking about what you'd get out of it. That's who I used to be, before I got lost in the money and the power and the endless climb. I want to be that person again. I want to build something that actually matters. What are you thinking? I don't know yet, Marcus admitted. Something different. Something that helps people instead of just generating profit. Something with purpose. Thomas smiled. Now you're talking. They finished the pizza as the sun set behind the buildings, painting everything in shades of orange and purple. The city hummed around them, indifferent to their presence. Just 2 men on a corner, talking about dreams. Marcus's phone rang, his lawyer. Marcus, it's done. The DA is dropping all charges. They're issuing a formal apology tomorrow. Richard's been located in Brazil, and they're starting extradition proceedings. You're free. Completely free. Marcus thanked him and hung up. He sat there, phone in hand, waiting to feel something. Relief, joy, triumph. But all he felt was tired. Good news? Thomas asked. Charges dropped. My name's cleared. Congratulations. Marcus looked at him. It doesn't feel like I thought it would. It never does, Thomas said. You think vindication will fix everything, but it just closes one chapter. You still have to figure out what comes next. I know what comes next, Marcus said. He'd been thinking about this for days, planning it. I want you to help me. Thomas laughed. Help you? I'm homeless. What could I possibly help you with? Building something real. I'm starting a new company. Not like Holloway Enterprises. Something completely different. A social enterprise. Housing for the homeless. Job training. Mental health services. Real support, not just handouts. And I want you to help me run it. Thomas stared at him. You're joking. I've never been more serious in my life. Marcus, I live on the street. I haven't had a real job in 4 years. I'm not qualified. You're the most qualified person I know, Marcus interrupted. You've lived it. You understand what people need because you've needed it yourself. You have empathy and wisdom and integrity. Things I forgot I valued until I met you. Things that can't be taught in business school. Thomas shook his head. This is crazy. Maybe. But I've spent my entire life playing it safe, building the right kind of company, impressing the right kind of people. And where did it get me? Alone and miserable. I want to do something different this time. Something that actually helps people. And I need someone I trust. Someone I know won't stab me in the back the moment things get hard. That's you. Thomas was quiet for a long time. Marcus could see the conflict playing across his face. The desire to believe warring with years of disappointment and betrayal. I don't even have a place to live, Thomas finally said. How am I supposed to help you run a company? We'll fix that, Marcus said. First step is getting you housing. Then we work on the rest together. You teach me about what people really need. I handle the business side. We build something that actually makes a difference. Why are you doing this? Thomas asked. Why me? Because you're the only person who was there when everyone else walked away. Because you helped me without wanting anything in return. Because you reminded me what it means to be human. And because I think you deserve a second chance just as much as I do. Thomas looked away, and Marcus saw him wipe at his eyes quickly. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Thomas laughed, a wet sound. This is insane. Is that a yes? Thomas looked at him, really looked at him. Then he extended his hand. Yeah, okay, yes. They shook on it there on the sidewalk, sealing a partnership built not on contracts or profit margins, but on something far more valuable, trust. The press conference was held 2 days later. Marcus stood at a podium in a small community center in the Bronx, not in some fancy hotel ballroom. The reporters who showed up were mostly confused. This wasn't the triumphant return they'd expected. 3 months ago, my life fell apart, Marcus began. I was accused of crimes I didn't commit. My assets were frozen. My reputation was destroyed. And every person I thought cared about me walked away. Partners, friends, family, everyone. He paused, looking out at the cameras. Except one person. A man named Thomas Chun. He'd been living on the street outside my building for years. I'd walked past him thousands of times without seeing him. But when I was at my lowest, when I had nothing to offer, he offered me kindness. Not because he wanted something from me, just because it was the right thing to do. Marcus gestured to the side of the room. Thomas stood there in new clothes that still looked uncomfortable on him. Clean-shaven, nervous. Thomas taught me something I'd forgotten in my climb to the top. That success isn't measured in dollars or deals. It's measured in how we treat each other, in dignity, in compassion, in being there for each other when everything falls apart. He took a breath. I've been cleared of all charges. The real criminal has been identified and will face justice. I could use this moment to talk about vindication or to attack the people who abandoned me. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to announce something new. A new chapter. Marcus pulled out a folder and held it up. I'm starting a foundation, the Second Chances Initiative. We're going to build transitional housing. provide job training and mental health services, create pathways for people experiencing homelessness to rebuild their lives with dignity. And Thomas is going to help me run it because he understands what these people need in a way I never could. The reporters erupted with questions. Is this a publicity stunt? How much money are you investing? What makes you think you can solve homelessness? Marcus held up his hand. This isn't about solving everything. It's about helping people, one at a time. It's about recognizing that the person sleeping on the street is someone's father, someone's brother, someone who had a life before everything went wrong. It's about giving them a chance to rebuild without judgment, without conditions. Just support. A reporter in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Holloway, your former partner Richard Chon, the man who framed you, has the same last name as Thomas. Is that a coincidence? Marcus glanced at Thomas, who nodded slightly. No, Marcus said. It's not a coincidence. Thomas and Richard were brothers. Richard betrayed Thomas the same way he betrayed me. Stole from his own brother's company, destroyed his life, and walked away without consequences. Until now, the room went silent. That detail changed everything. The story just got a lot more complicated. Marcus continued. Thomas could have used this opportunity to seek revenge, to turn his brother in himself, to make headlines about his own betrayal. But that's not who he is. He chose to focus on moving forward instead of looking back. And that's exactly the kind of person I want to build this foundation with. Someone who understands that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about refusing to let the past poison your future. After the press conference, Marcus and Thomas stood outside the community center. The cameras had left. The reporters had scattered to file their stories. It was just the two of them again. You didn't have to tell them about Richard being my brother, Thomas said. Yes, I did, Marcus replied, because it matters. It shows who you are. But you didn't help me because you wanted revenge on him. You helped me because it was right. People need to know that. Thomas was quiet. I haven't spoken to Richard in 12 years. Not since the trial. Part of me hopes the extradition works, that he faces consequences. But another part of me just feels sad. We used to be close, before the money, before the business. We were just brothers. And then somewhere along the way, he changed. Or maybe I did. Or maybe we both did. I don't know. The foundation is going to work, Marcus said. I don't know if it'll change the world, but it'll change some lives. That's enough. What about your family? Thomas asked. Have you talked to them since the charges were dropped? Marcus shook his head. David sent a text. Glad you were cleared. That was it. Rebecca hasn't reached out at all. I don't think they will. They made their choice when things got hard. I can forgive them eventually, but I can't forget. And I don't need them anymore. I have something better. What's that? A partner I can trust. A purpose that matters. That's more than I had when I was on top of the world. They walked down the street together. Two men who'd found friendship in the ruins of their old lives. The city moved around them, indifferent as always. But they were no longer invisible. They were building something real. 6 months later, the Second Chances Initiative opened its first facility. A 5-story building in Brooklyn that had been abandoned for years. Marcus bought it for pennies on the dollar and renovated it completely. 60 units of transitional housing. A commercial kitchen for job training. Mental health counselors on staff. Case managers to help residents navigate the systems that had failed them. Thomas ran the day-to-day operations. He knew everyone by name, knew their stories, treated them with dignity. He'd been where they were. He understood the shame, the fear, the desperate hope that maybe this time would be different. Marcus handled the business side, fundraising, partnerships, navigating the bureaucracy of city and state regulations. But he was there too, in the building, talking to residents, listening to their stories, learning from them. One evening, Marcus and Thomas stood on the roof of the building, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The Holloway Tower was visible in the distance, Marcus's name still carved in granite above the entrance. "Do you miss it?" Thomas asked. "Running a corporation? Having that power?" Marcus thought about it. Sometimes. Not the power itself, but the simplicity. Run the numbers. Make the deals. Measure success in quarterly reports. This is harder. Messier, success isn't always visible. Sometimes people relapse. Sometimes they leave and end up back on the streets. Sometimes we fail, but sometimes we don't, Thomas added. Sometimes someone gets their first apartment in 5 years. Sometimes they reconnect with their kids. Sometimes they get a job and cry because they didn't think anyone would ever hire them again. Those moments are worth all the failures. You're better at this than I ever was at running Holloway Enterprises, Marcus said. Different skills, Thomas replied. You were good at business. I'm good at people. Together, we make something that actually works. They stood in silence for a while. Then Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello, Marcus? It's ... It's David, his brother's voice. Marcus hadn't heard it in 8 months. David, I saw the article about the foundation, about what you're doing. It's really good work. Thank you. Marcus kept his voice neutral. He wasn't going to make this easy. I wanted to apologize for how I treated you, for telling you to stay away from Mom's funeral, for not believing you. I should have been there. You're my brother, and I abandoned you when you needed me most. I'm sorry. The words Marcus had wanted to hear for so long. But now that they'd come, they felt hollow. Too late. I appreciate that, Marcus said. But I needed you then. Not now. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong, and that I'm proud of what you're building. Marcus closed his eyes. David, I spent my whole life trying to make people proud, trying to earn love through success. And when that success disappeared, so did everyone's love. So I'm done performing. I'm doing this work because it matters, not because I want applause. Not even from family. I understand. David's voice was thick. For what it's worth, I'm trying to be better too. This whole thing made me look at my own life, my own priorities. I haven't been the brother I should have been, or the father. I'm working on it. That's good, Marcus said. And he meant it. He didn't want revenge, didn't want David to suffer. He just wanted to move forward. Maybe we can get coffee sometime, David offered tentatively. Talk. Really talk. Marcus looked at Thomas, who was pretending not to listen, but clearly was. Thomas gave him a small nod. Permission, or encouragement, or just understanding. Maybe, Marcus said. I'm not ready yet, but maybe someday. I need time. I'll wait, David said. However long it takes. They hung up. Marcus stood there, phone in hand, feeling something complicated. Not quite forgiveness, not quite closure, but maybe the beginning of something. Healing, perhaps. That your brother? Thomas asked. Yeah. What did he want? To apologize. To reconnect, maybe. You going to? Marcus thought about it. I don't know. Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell. But another part remembers being kids together. Before everything got complicated. Before money and status mattered. When we were just brothers playing basketball in the driveway. I miss that person. I don't know if he still exists. People can change, Thomas said. I'm proof of that. You're proof of that. If we can change, so can he. Question is whether you want to give him the chance. Do you ever think about reaching out to Richard? Marcus asked. Thomas was quiet for a long time. Every day. I wonder if he thinks about me. If he feels guilty. If he even knows I'm alive. Part of me wants to confront him. To ask him why. Why he destroyed me. Why our relationship meant so little that he could throw it away for money. But I know the answer wouldn't satisfy me. Nothing he could say would make it make sense. So I just let it go. Or try to. That's harder than revenge, Marcus observed. Much harder, Thomas agreed. Revenge is easy. It's holding on to the anger, feeding it, letting it consume you. Forgiveness, or at least letting go, that takes real strength. Every day you have to choose it. Some days I fail, but I keep trying. Marcus nodded. He understood that now. The constant effort of choosing to move forward instead of looking back. I got an email from Richard yesterday, Marcus said. Or his lawyer, anyway. Trying to negotiate a plea deal. Wants to apologize. Wants to make amends. What did you say? Nothing yet. I don't know what to say. Part of me wants to watch him burn. He destroyed my life. Got my mother killed. Betrayed everything we built together. But then I think about you and this foundation, and I realize that holding on to that anger just poisons me. Not him. Me. So what will you do? I'll read what he has to say, but I won't negotiate. He needs to face the consequences of what he did. real consequences. Maybe after that, after he's served his time, maybe then we can talk about forgiveness. But not before. Justice first. Forgiveness later, if at all. Thomas smiled. Look at you. Learning boundaries. I had a good teacher. They went back downstairs. The common room was full. Residents playing cards, watching TV, just existing in a space where they felt safe. This was what success looked like now. Not a corner office or a stock price, but people laughing, people healing, people being given a chance. A young woman approached them. Maria. She'd been in the program for 3 months. Had lived on the streets for 2 years before that, after escaping an abusive relationship with nothing but the clothes on her back. Thomas Marcus, I wanted to tell you something, she said, nervous energy radiating off her. I got the job. The one I interviewed for last week. They called today. I start Monday. Thomas hugged her. Maria, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, she said, tears streaming down her face. Without this place, I was ready to give up. I didn't think anyone would ever hire me. Not with my record, not with my history. But you believed in me. You helped me practice for the interview. You gave me clothes to wear. You gave me hope. Marcus felt his own eyes burning. This was why they did this work. You did this yourself, Marcus told her. We just provided the tools. You put in the effort. You showed up. You fought for this. That's all you. After Maria left, practically floating with joy, Thomas turned to Marcus. Days like this make it all worth it. Yeah, Marcus agreed. They really do. A year after the Second Chances Initiative opened, they held an anniversary celebration. The building was packed with residents, staff, donors, and supporters. Even some press. Marcus stood at a microphone, looking out at the crowd. Thomas beside him. When I started this foundation, Marcus said, I thought I was helping people. And I was. But what I didn't expect was how much you all would help me. Every person in this room has taught me something. About resilience, about dignity, about what really matters in life. You've shown me that success isn't about how much you accumulate. It's about how much you give, how you show up for people, how you treat them with respect and kindness, even when they can't give you anything in return. Single quotes. He paused, gathering his thoughts. A wise man once told me that legacy is bullshit. That it's just ego dressed up as ambition. And he was right. I spent 30 years trying to build a legacy, a company that would bear my name forever. And you know what? That company exists without me just fine. My name is still on the building, but it means nothing. No one there remembers who I really was. But here He gestured around the room. Here, I'm just Marcus. Not a CEO, not a billionaire. Just a guy trying to do some good. And that's the best thing I've ever been. The room erupted in applause. But Marcus wasn't done. I want to introduce you to someone, my partner in all this. Thomas Chun. Some of you know his story. He lived on the streets for 4 years, lost everything to betrayal and bad luck, but he never lost his humanity, never lost his capacity for kindness. And when I was at my lowest point, when everyone else had abandoned me, he was there. Not because he wanted something from me, just because it was right. Thomas, come say something. Thomas stepped up to the microphone, visibly uncomfortable with the attention. I'm not good at speeches, he started, and the crowd laughed warmly. But I want to say this. When I was living on that corner, I was invisible. People walked past me every day and never saw me. I could have died there, and the world would have just stepped over my body and kept moving. That's the reality of homelessness. You become invisible, less than human in people's eyes. His voice cracked slightly, but Marcus saw me. And more importantly, he saw all of you. He understood that every person experiencing homelessness has a story, has value, has potential, and he decided to do something about it. This foundation isn't about charity. It's about dignity. It's about recognizing that circumstances change, but humanity doesn't. That we're all worthy of respect and support, regardless of where we sleep at night. Thomas looked at Marcus. You saved my life. Not with money or housing, though those things helped. You saved my life by treating me like a human being, by listening to me, by valuing what I had to say. That's what this place does. It saves lives by seeing people. The applause was deafening. Later that night, after everyone had left, Marcus and Thomas sat in the empty common room. Tired but satisfied. We're going to need a bigger building, Thomas said. The waiting list is over 200 people now. I know, Marcus replied. I'm working on it. There's a property in Queens, 8 stories. We could house twice as many people. That's a lot of money. I have it. And if I don't, I'll raise it. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm sure of it now. Single quotes, Thomas smiled. Who would have thought? A CEO and a homeless guy, changing the world one person at a time. Former CEO, Marcus corrected. Former homeless guy, Thomas countered. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 men who'd found purpose in the wreckage of their old lives. The city lights twinkled through the windows. Somewhere out there, people were sleeping on sidewalks, in subway stations, under bridges, cold and scared and invisible. But slowly, one by one, they were bringing them home. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from David. Coffee tomorrow? No pressure if you're not ready. Marcus showed it to Thomas. What do you think? I think, Thomas said slowly, that second chances aren't just for the people in this building. Sometimes they're for family too. Doesn't mean you have to forget what happened, but maybe it means you don't have to carry it forever. Marcus typed out a response. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the cafe on 5th. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. You're braver than you think, Thomas said. I learned from the best, Marcus replied. 2 years after Marcus's world collapsed, he sat across from David at a small cafe. It was their 6th meeting. The first few had been awkward, stilted, full of long silences and careful words. But slowly, they were finding their way back to something that resembled brotherhood. Rebecca wants to meet, David said. She's been following the foundation. She's impressed with what you're doing. Is she ready to apologize? Marcus asked. He wasn't being petty. He just needed to know where they stood. I think so. She's been in therapy, working through some things. She realizes she projected a lot of her own guilt about Mom onto you. It was easier to blame you than to face her own regrets about not spending more time with her, about always being too busy. Marcus sipped his coffee. I'm not the same person I was. The man she knew, the brother she grew up with, he's gone. This work changed me. I can't go back to who I was before. She doesn't want you to, David said. None of us do. The old Marcus was successful, but he was also kind of miserable. You hid it well, but we could all see it. You were never happy, just driven. Now, you actually seem at peace. I am, Marcus realized. For the first time in my life, I actually am. They talked about their mother, about memories from childhood, about regrets and forgiveness and the complicated dance of family. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, real. That night, Marcus stood on the corner where he'd first really seen Thomas. The scaffolding was gone now. A new building had gone up. The spot where Thomas used to sleep was now a doorway to expensive condos. But Marcus could still picture it. The tarp, the small camping stove, the man who'd changed his life. Thomas walked up beside him. They stood together, looking at the space that had started everything. Hard to believe it's been 2 years, Thomas said. Feels like yesterday, and a lifetime ago all at once, Marcus agreed. Any regrets? About what? All of it? Losing the company. The scandal. Starting over. Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it. No, he said finally. I wouldn't change any of it. Because if none of that had happened, I'd still be that person. Cold, isolated, successful, but miserable. I needed to lose everything to find out what actually mattered. I needed to be stripped down to nothing to become who I was supposed to be. That's a hell of an expensive lesson, Thomas observed. Best money I never spent, Marcus replied with a smile. They walked back to the foundation building together. Their building. Their purpose. Their second chance. The media had mostly moved on. The scandal was old news. Richard Chun was serving 15 years in federal prison. Holloway Enterprises had rebranded. Marcus's name was no longer on the building. But his name was on something better. On the Second Chances Initiative. On the lives they'd changed. On the hope they'd given to people who thought hope was lost forever. That night, Marcus lay in his modest apartment. Not a penthouse, just a simple two-bedroom near the foundation. He could afford more, but he didn't want more. He had everything he needed. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought about the homeless man who'd watched him that first day, who'd offered him kindness when the whole world had turned its back, who'd reminded him what it meant to be human. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. Sometimes betrayal is the catalyst for transformation. Sometimes the person who saves you is the one you'd walked past 1,000 times without seeing. And sometimes the greatest success isn't measured in dollars or deals, but in the simple act of showing up for another human being. Just because it's right. Just because they need it. Just because we're all one bad day away from needing someone to see us. To really see us. Marcus had been seen, and now he spent every day making sure others were seen too. That was his legacy. Not a building with his name on it, not a fortune or a title, but the lives he'd touched, the people he'd helped, the dignity he'd restored, and the friendship with a man who'd had nothing but gave him everything. That was success. That was enough. That was everything.